3 ranked opponents in 14 days. They made it through the gauntlet, although the results weren't what we expected. A couple of losses and a 3.5-hour weather delay, one of the stranger Saturdays I can remember.
Yeah, just a quick fact, Rutgers played in the first college football game in 1869 against Princeton. Guess what, guys? They're not playing Princeton on Saturday.
So it's homecoming. You decided to come back, huh? Just so you know, the vote was close, but Todd and I were the swing votes. We missed you.
Oh, well, thank you.
The blue-white tailgate is next. And we welcome everyone to the Blue White Tailgate Show. Steve, he's back, Trey, and Todd. Happy homecoming. Great to have you back on the set. I mean homecoming for the show. Obviously another tough one that, as Todd mentioned in the open, was one of the more bizarre. I mean, every game's different. This was different.
Yeah, it was, and the team was played about as sloppy as the conditions as well. I mean, they looked like Trace was going to throw for about 700 yards there in the first quarter and a half, and then that bizarre weather delay as they're doing a play review. They come back and they didn't give an answer right away with the play. They say, we've got a weather delay that's coming, and then you never know when it was going to come back. And, of course, both teams had to deal with the delay, but when you're the visitors, it's a little bit different in those locker rooms.
Sure. I mean, you're not at home. You're not in a familiar space. A lot of these kids is the first time they were at Michigan State, and what are you going to do? You don't know how long it's going to take, and to kind of restart your battery. I mean, it's not an easy thing to do, Steve.
No, it's not, and being at home does help because you get a little juice from your crowd when you come back, and the diehards are there,
Yep.
Which makes it a little louder sometimes. Our Kishbank momentum moment. Okay, there are not many times in the history of broadcasting where you sit back and it's 5:17. And you look at everybody and say, we've gone 5 hours and 12 minutes, and now we're at halftime. That's exactly what I said. This stopped everything, and there's no handbook for this as to how to handle it. That's part of the issue. There's no handbook, and especially when they keep moving the times around. We were told 3:34, 4:30, 4:15, 4:35, 5:30, and then suddenly it was 4:38. Right? So now when you keep getting different times, you can't handle that.
Yeah, I mean, there is no playbook for this, and it was interesting. I saw Coach Franklin talking after the game, and I think he was very upfront about that. In all the years he's been coaching, he had nothing in his playbook to say for a 3.5-hour delay. He didn't have it.
Yeah, who does? I mean, nobody does. Trace McSorley on the delay.
I mean, that was a new experience for all of us. We did the best we could, had the idea how to handle a situation like that, but you can't let that affect you on the field. Kind of as I said earlier, it doesn't matter what the weather is. It could be hail, rain, snow, -20, plus 130 out there. I mean, if they're spotting that ball, you got to play and you got to produce.
Yeah, when do you eat? How do you warm up again? I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that come into play that a lot of people don't think about. All right, time now for the PSECU game break, and with that, Allison Luthman.
Hey guys, welcome to your PSECU pregame update, bringing you everything you need to know before kickoff this Saturday. Now, although Penn State did not come away with a win last week, there were still a couple of personal milestones achieved on Saturday. Trace McSorley's 3 touchdown passes moved him to a career total of 50, passing Christian Hackenberg for most in Penn State history. And Saquon Barkley's 111 yards of total offense moved him to number 2 on the Penn State record boards. And Saturday is homecoming here in Happy Valley. There will be a tailgating competition for alumni and students alike. The judging will go on between 9 and 11 a.m. and they'll judge based on most creative, most spirited, and best food at tailgates. Winners and prizes will be announced and handed out before fans enter the game on Saturday afternoon. Now that's been your PSECU pregame update. We'll see you at the game.
All right. Thank you, Allison. Congrats, by the way, on being a judge for that. I don't know about that. Let's get to the college football playoff. Todd, nothing really has changed in the college football playoff, and there'll be some big games to talk about this week. Problem is, you look at the Big Ten, only Wisconsin there. Yeah,
Wisconsin's really in a tough spot. They're going to need a lot of help sitting there at number 8, undefeated. However, you know, some of the cannibalizing that was going on in other conferences, you see Big 12 do it every year. Big 10 just did it. So, you know, seeing Iowa pop into the top 25 at number 20, you know, Wisconsin's going to face, you know, if Michigan keeps winning, you know, they might get a ranking at the end of it. So Wisconsin's going to have a chance to win some games and impress. And look, there's there's 4 games that involve top 12, top 13 teams this week. There's going to be teams taking losses.
And James Franklin wants his team to just lock in on the task at hand.
When things are going well, there's a lot of noise, a lot of positivity, a lot of patting on the back, and then when you lose a game, it's the complete opposite. It couldn't be more negative. And for us in the past, we haven't worried about all those things. There's playoff rankings coming out. There's this, there's that, there's you know, stuff that doesn't matter. The preseason rankings don't matter. Midseason rankings don't matter. You go 1-0 every single week. You respect your opponent. You prepare like crazy. You get into the submarine, and you shut everything else out.
And they're going to face a Rutgers team that's won 3 of its last 4. And Trey, the series of which you participated in against the State University of New Jersey has been obviously one-sided. Penn State, as you look at the series numbers.
Yeah, I mean, Rutgers always had some talented players. They just never had enough of them to beat us, and we never lost to them. And we're not going to lose on Saturday, I'll tell you that much.
So Trey, he's already put back the marker down. He's back. He's back in the saddle again. Oh my goodness! Coming up, we'll take a look at the Nittany Lion offense and discuss where they're going as we continue after this. All right, welcome back. Let's take a look at the Penn State offense. They, again, for 2.5 quarters struggled running the ball. Then the final quarter and a half found a little bit, and then threw for 401. So it's a mixed bag that we're looking at here, right?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, if you think about it, we were talking about it on the break that, you know, for you to score 38 points in the horseshoe, 24 points at Michigan State, I mean, you got to come up with a win, and they just couldn't get it done.
Yeah, a tale of 2 games, really, with the conditions we talked about before the weather delay after. Trace McSorley just throwing the ball all over the place, almost 200 yards passing in the first quarter. Look, they put up 14 points in the first quarter, which means, do the math, they only put up 10 in the final 3 quarters. So regardless of the yardage that they put up, they just did not finish drives and did not put points on the board.
Time now for our Family Clothesline Offensive Player of the Week, brought to you by our good friends at the Family Clothesline. Go to PennStateClothes.com. We go with wide receiver Deshaun Hamilton. Whenever he was targeted, he seemed to make plays on the day, including this touchdown right here.
Yeah, I mean, he runs great routes. He's a guy who's been around the block. You know, there's a reason he's caught more balls than anybody else in the history of Penn State. He's a very, very good college player.
And did a really nice job with some yards after the catch. A really tough grab there in traffic. This one was the one I'm speaking of specifically. This is a 3rd and 9. And look at him just go laterally to get a couple more yards and break it for a big gain.
Yeah, look who's throwing the block in front.
Yep, hustle down, Saquon Barkley.
Hustling down the field. Our Family Clothesline Offensive Player of the Week, which now brings us to the Joel Comfer Drive of the Week. Brought to you by our good friends at Joel Comfer in State College. And now let's take a look. It's a 7-play, 92-yard drive. This is the longest drive of the season for Penn State to this point, and it starts out with Deshaun Hamilton. And they really got into a good rhythm on this drive. I mean, you go 7 plays, 92 yards, you're finding something.
Yeah, it's a big-time throw there.
And just look how confident Trace McSorley was in this drive, and I love the little wrinkle with Saquon Barkley out of the Wildcat, throwing it to Jasicki, who they got involved in this game.
Yeah, his passer rating's really high right now. So, I mean, that part's really impressive. And then, you know, they drive down the field on this 1st down and 10 play, and then he hits Hamilton. We just saw this for the touchdown to cap the longest drive of the year for Penn State. 7 plays, 92 yards. Advanced analytics show that Penn State has faced in the last 5 games 5 of the top 30 rush defenses in the country. But Trey, you looking at this, what do they need to find? Is this a question of too many guys in the box? Is it a question of hat on hat? What do you say?
I think the biggest challenge that they have is that to me, they have to be able to move people out of the way. I don't know if it's just that they don't practice it enough, that they don't. It's not like the old time when you would go like hat on hat and guys in practice where it'd be 7-on-7, really difficult practices. I don't think they hit that much anymore, and I think it's really hard to recover. Halfway through the season now.
What about the physical versus the finesse part that's been brought up?
Well, that's the big part of it is, look, you're not getting 3 yards and all of a sudden you're 2nd and 7. You're losing 2, or you're gaining nothing or losing 1. So you're put in a tough down and distance situation. Everybody keeps talking about, well, why can't you give the ball to Saquon Barkley more often? Well, because if you give it to him and you lose a yard, and then you give it to him again and you gain another yard, you're in a really tough 3rd down conversion situation. So you're all of a sudden going to the pass quickly, mainly because that's working also. I mean, it's not like the pass game's not working. The pass game is working. Teams are selling out to stop Barkley.
And for Steven Gonzalez at that left guard spot, you heard James Franklin talk about physical versus finesse. They're ready to accept the challenge.
I think it's a huge challenge, not only for me, but for the rest of the offensive line. And I think, that's the real emphasis this week, to try to improve that. And, that's what we do every week, to try to improve our physicality. So I think that'll be our mindset this week, and just try to be as physical as we can against Rutgers.
And some people have said, Trey, you don't just flip the switch and you do it, but you've got to go out and get something out of that.
Yeah, I mean, there seems to me that there's like a passivity, a passiveness about the guys. You don't see, or I certainly don't see those guys really getting PO'd and want to take it out on someone. I mean, you'd always have offensive linemen. They're a little bit different than defensive linemen, just the way that they kind of their development and the type of attitude that you have. And I don't see any of those guys really going after their opponent.
Well, it's a mixed message with the style of offense that you got also, because you are doing a run-pass option. You're not necessarily asking these guys to drive them down the field 5 yards every single time. Offensive lines, just like offenses, they get identities. And if you want their identity to be, 3-4 yards on a play, it's going to be probably in a different style of offense. But whatever they want out of them, they're not exactly executing it the way that they need to in these last couple of games.
And on the offensive game plan against Rutgers, Allison Luthman takes a closer look.
After coming off of 2 losses heading into this Rutgers game, Penn State is obviously looking to make some improvements. DeAndre Tompkins breaks down what Penn State offense is looking to do.
Each week we analyze the defense, figure out what coverages they play, what tendencies they have. And each team is different. Some teams are kind of similar here and there, but others have a little wrinkle in their game. And as an offense, we have to find out what that wrinkle is and attack it.
James Franklin says this Rutgers defense is something and his team isn't exactly used to seeing. It's going to cause a couple of adjustments in their game plan.
Defensively, they've moved to an odd front defense, which is different. We don't see that very often. It changes how you have to game plan. It changes your blocking schemes in the running game. It changes your blocking schemes in the passing game from a protection standpoint. And then on special teams, Janarian Grant is always an issue and always a concern. So
after taking all of these things into consideration, both also agree that consistency is going to be the key for Saturday. Guys.
All right, thanks, Allison. Let's take a look at the tail of the tape now. The Penn State offense, the Rutgers defense. And one thing you'll see on the tail of the tape right away, all those numbers on the right for Rutgers are exponentially better than last year. And one number that's not in there that tells you a little bit of a story, last year going into this game, they'd given up 134 points in the first quarter heading into the Penn State game. This year, they've given up 34. They're giving themselves a chance.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what happens because Penn State is, number 1 in the country in scoring offense in the first quarter. You got Rutgers got to be right there in the top 10 as far as scoring defense. So, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Something's got to give.
And I like the way that they're building, at least trying to rebuild the program and get themselves into a competitive situation. You're doing it with the offensive line and interior and some different schemes and that type of stuff. You're not don't go out there and get a bunch of fast skills guys around because you need to build interior-wise to make stuff happen and stay in a game.
And in the 2 years that Saquon Barkley has faced Rutgers, let's look at it. He has taken look at the numbers, Todd. When you see those numbers, they're eye-popping.
Well, it's time for Saquon Barkley, right, to get the ball a little bit more often. This might be the game that he can break loose a little bit after facing a lot of tough run defenses in a row.
And they also have to win third down, too, don't they, Trey?
Yeah, absolutely. They got to win third down, and, I'd like to see those stats just for Saturday. 37 carries, 287 yards, and 3 touchdowns.
That would be a workhorse day in the cold at Beaver Stadium.
Yes.
You know, and that's one thing you'll see with Rutgers, and we'll talk about this later. That's how they play. They want to play, run the football over and over and over again. They're only averaging 16 pass attempts during this 4-game stretch. All right, back with more after this. Welcome back. There's only one running back in the history of Penn State football to lead the team in rushing all 4 seasons he was at Penn State. His name, William Henry Dozier Jr., known as Deke. Deke Jr., DJ Dozier. Teammate of Trey Bauer. We'll get into that emotional experience in a moment. DJ, first of all, I mean, as a guy that had to tote the rock around here for 4 years and did it so effectively, when you watch a guy like Saquon Barkley, what are you seeing running back to running back?
Well, first of all, you know, I was fortunate enough to have a chance to meet Saquon, and my son and I had a chance to meet him a couple of years ago. You know, what a quality kid. And I hate to call him a kid, but, you know, I'm much older now, so I guess I can do that. But just a great guy. I mean, you can tell. Just a typical, you know, Penn State student athlete that takes care of business. You know, obviously on the field is a great athlete, but I think what's more impressive is what he does off the field. You know, obviously in the locker room, but, you know, from everything I've heard in terms of just the kind of person he is on campus, you know, those are the kind of things that, of course, nowadays, you know, we gravitate to as alum at Penn State is, you know, not just a great athlete. I think we all expect to a certain degree to have great athletes out on the field. But, you know, when a kid is also a great human being, you know, high level of character, that's 2 thumbs up. So he falls in that category.
Yeah. Now, DJ, I wanted to ask you something. I mean, the game has changed dramatically when you've got so many kids that are leaving, you know, after 3 years. What would your advice be for Saquon? I mean, he does have another year of eligibility, but, you know, from all accounts, it looks like he's going to be a top 5 pick. And what would your suggestion be to him?
Trey, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear. It was muffled. I apologize, guys, because I am traveling.
Right.
Yeah.
He wanted to know. Trey wanted to know, DJ, what your advice would be to Saquon about whether to go to the NFL now or to stay.
Oh, great question. Great question. Listen, you know, at the end of the day, you have to follow your heart. But if I did have a chance to sit down with him, you know, my advice would actually be something that I heard from Marvin Demoff, and you guys probably remember that name, one of the first few NFL agents, actually one of the first 3 that started an agency many years ago. It represented quite a few guys from Penn State. A great person. I had a chance to work with him a little bit. But, you know, one of the things that he advised every athlete in this case is, you know, you look at it one of 2 ways. You know, because he's reached the level he has, the status, you know, all eyes are on him. Obviously, a high draft candidate, a high draft pick candidate. And so Marvin would say, look, you've got 1 or 2 choices. You can either next year play football and not get paid for it, or play football and get paid for it. And so, and he would go on to say that you know, you would actually coming out early, if you can do it, actually gives you potentially another year of playing football in the NFL, which, you know, from an economical standpoint, means more money, or at least 1 more or 2 more years more than you would have by going back to college and then coming out. So, you know, I would sort of stay along those lines, at least from a business perspective. But again, I think at the end of the day, he really just has to follow his heart. And, you know, a kid like that, you know, that has the mindset that he has, will come up with I think a good decision.
DJ, Saquon is one of the great leaders on the team. The Nittany Lions have a lot of leaders. They're coming off 2 really tough, excruciating losses on the road. How important is that leadership in the locker room now? What are you looking for once you look at it and say, well, we haven't reached some of the goals we want to reach this year? Well, how important do they lean on those leaders in the locker room?
leadership's everything. One of the benefits that Trey and I had while we were at Penn State, so even when we came in as freshmen, although we went through some tough years, we had great leaders on our team. Because, as a young person, you're trying to fill shoes and fill a spot that others, have filled in the past. But there are oftentimes you don't necessarily know how to act or react to certain situations. So those young guys are looking toward the leaders, looking to Saquon and McSorley to see, what their reactions are to situations like this. When they have a positive reaction, then, that attitude permeates throughout the locker room, I believe. And so leadership in this case is vital, especially coming off of a loss. Trey and I were talking the other day, when we lost that game in the 86 Orange Bowl to Oklahoma, the leaders stepped up.
No question they did. No question.
Right.
DJ,
right.
Hey, DJ, thanks so much for the time. We really appreciate it because we've run right to the edge of the segment. Thanks so much.
Absolutely.
DJ Dozier, one of the all-time greats for the Nittany Lions. A look at the defense next as we continue with Blue White Tailgate. Let's take a look at the Penn State defense now. We're going to start out with our Family Clothesline Defensive Player of the Week, brought to you by our good friends at the Family Clothesline. Go to PennStateClothes.com. Jack Ham and I on the radio broadcast went with Kevin Gibbons because we just felt that in watching him in that wide view that he was around plays all day or in the backfield a lot all day getting close to people. And so we went with him, especially with that move out to defensive end, which is not the easiest move to make.
Yeah, I mean, he's playing out of position. He's playing against a quality opponent. He hasn't had a lot of practice time at that position, and I think that all things considered, I think he did well.
One of my favorite plays is when he tries to chase down Brian Lewerke. He didn't even get to him, but that shows you the kind of athlete this guy is. They asked him to put some weight on to handle the interior, to handle defensive tackle, but he's got the versatility, the athletic ability to actually chase down one of the better quarterbacks in the Big Ten.
I remember a time that he was in the low 270s. They were concerned whether they could put more weight on him. Now he's at 287 and still moving, and James Franklin will tell you his versatility really helps the defense.
I think Kevin Givens does some really good things and brings some real value there, but obviously he doesn't have nearly the accumulated reps at defensive end that he does at defensive tackle. So, the more experience he gains there, and then the more we're able to develop some of the younger guys, that'll be helpful because we are missing those two guys right now. There's no doubt about that.
And those two guys are Torrance Brown and Ryan Buchholz. And what happened with Buchholz is not having him took away a defensive package they use. They go to the 4 defensive end package because Buchholz will go inside. Suddenly your hands are tied. You don't have as many defensive packages to use because the primary one's off the table temporarily.
Well, we've talked about the rotation, Trey, all year long, about getting a lot of people out there, a lot of, and Ryan Buchholz was one of the first ones to say, look, if you need to take me off the field to keep other guys on there that are fresh, do it, because we want to get limited snaps but be at 100% to chase down the quarterback. And when you're missing those two guys, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that I think Sean Spencer's done a great job with those guys. I mean, I would have to think that it's probably the deepest position we have, other than wideout, is our defensive line. I think he's done a great job with those kids and, rotating them in. But, certainly when you have 2 starters that are out, impact players, I mean, it's going to hurt.
And you have to be able to get off the field. The third down numbers in the opening 7 games of the season are different than the last 2 games. And again, 50%, and 3 of those against Michigan State were 3rd and 11 plus.
Well, those are the most frustrating. I mean, let's face it, it was 3rd and 18, and they got a 36-yard gain on the play. And that's part of what you think, maybe the zone coverages, they're just too much on their heels. I mean, obviously they're trying to send pressure, they're trying to blitz. But Lewerke did a great job of getting the ball into some windows, but some of the windows were awfully large. And when you got 3rd and more than 10, you just can't simply let them convert like that.
Well, chin strap time. It's going to be big guy football inside. Look at the tail of the tape between these two because Rutgers wants to run the football. Their numbers offensively are better than last year, and part of that is now 167 yards with Gus Edwards and Robert Martin at tailback. And while those aren't blow you away numbers there, Trey, they're better than last year on that right-hand side.
Well, I mean, if you would have told me that 9-10 games into the season that Rutgers would be averaging more yards on the ground than Penn State, I would say you're crazy. So obviously they've got a formula that they're sticking with. They don't throw the ball that well. They don't try to, and it's interesting that in this day and age they really want to run the ball.
And you know what? You watch a tape and you see that Rutgers offensive line getting better and better, and that's what James Franklin sees.
They do have a big physical offensive line. They're big at the running back position. You look at two of their best players are Miami transfers on their team. They're running back 235 pounds, and he'll pound you. And they're doing a nice job. They're doing a nice job of protecting the quarterback, max protect, play action pass, quick game, move the pocket, things like that.
They averaged 16 pass attempts in each of the last 4 games. What does that tell you they want to do?
Well, they want to shorten the game. They want to keep the defense off the field, keep their offense on the field as much as they possibly can. Work possession, time of possession, try not to turn the ball over. Look, it's a smart way to try and get yourselves back into games, because last year the Scarlet Knights completely non-competitive. They've already got 3 conference wins this year.
Yeah, they do, and they're also a team that thrives when they lead at the half. They are 4-0 when they lead at the half. They're 0-5 when they trail at the half. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But Chris Ash has done a good job of putting a style together that fits the personnel he currently has. That's the sign of good coaching, and he's done a good job with them. Coming up, we go inside the film room with Jay Paterno. Then later in the show, we'll take an exclusive look at Rutgers, and then the good, the bad, and the ugly. And Trey picks Notre Dame, Miami. Now that's a teaser.
We are back on the Blue-White Tailgate. We're going into the film room with Jay Paterno. It is brought to you by Beer, Bellies, Beverage, and Jay. It's a good thing this is a look-forward segment, because some of the stuff we saw in the last game, look, it was a little bit sloppy, the conditions sloppy, but those 3rd and long conversions were not pretty for Penn State's defense. So now it's moving on to Rutgers. And it's not exactly the same Rutgers team we saw 1 year ago.
No, it's homecoming, and it's good to be back in Beaver Stadium for Penn State, no doubt. But this is a team that's much improved from last year. Again, not a great football team by any stretch of the imagination, but got some players playing with a lot of great effort. And let's talk about where they've made the biggest strides from last year. Take a look at these defensive stats. Last year against the run game, they made a great jump in total defense, great jump in points per game, and a real big jump in opponents' 3rd downs, which has been a problem for Penn State the last couple of weeks. Let's talk about Rutgers' defense in more detail here. Again, like we've seen the last couple of weeks, you're going to see 3 linebackers on 1st and 2nd down against Penn State's 3 wideout sets. Corners roll up, guys playing deep. So again, you're going to have a guy that's playing the run game and also playing the pass, and that's going to leave Deshaun Hamilton open for another big day. So expect him to do some great things. Let's take a look at them with their base defense on film on this play. And what you're going to see, when you looked at Rutgers sometimes last year, they didn't play with great effort. And that's not going to be the case Saturday. It's not been the case the last 4 games they played since Ohio State beat them. Now, one of the things that I think you'll see is we'll get into some nickel against Penn State with the 3 wideout set. They move number 2 down, who's aggressive, good pass defender. Number 3 comes in, and then number 58, who's a guy to watch Saturday, plays a stand-up defensive end, very aggressive, very productive. But again, let's take a look at this shot here against Michigan. They're going to throw a wide-out screen, and you're going to see that this thing goes all over the place, haywire. But look at all the white shirts running to the ball. There's 58 we talked about, came all the way across the field, came all the way back in and gets in on the play. So again, that's a guy to watch for. Again, why do they like the stand-up defensive end? Take a look at this with the zone read against Michigan. This defensive end, because he's a stand-up guy, gets to use his hands on the pass rush, also has a real good chance to sit here, make that read, hesitates while the read happens, and then chase the play down. Take a look at this on film. Watch him on the end of that line, and he just runs right down that line and makes a tackle for a gain of 1 from the backside, and he's unblocked. So expect McSorley to pull that ball a couple times and get involved in it. Now, one of the things they've also done is they have a good blitz scheme. Here they're going to bring a corner off the edge. They're going to bring their stand-up defensive end, and they're going to scrape the linebacker outside to handle the run game and the cutback stuff. And if Penn State gets into the zone read stuff, you know, that's a give read or pull read for the quarterback, and all of a sudden he's pulling into the corner. Take a look at how aggressively this corner comes off the ball here. And again, there's the linebacker right there to make the play. Those are going to be things that Penn State's got to handle. One other thing in the secondary, they have been very productive. The 4 starters have 8 interceptions, 32 passes they've broken up. They like to jump the routes. They drive on the ball very, very well. You'll see it on this video. So expect Penn State to run some double moves where they'll do some out and ups or post corner routes. Take a look at here on film how aggressively they drive on the ball here. This is a tight end route, and he comes up, cuts underneath it, makes a pick on the play. If the ball hangs up, expect them. You can see it right here on this film. If that ball hangs up at all, they're going to jump those routes. So look for Penn State to do a couple things where they fake, you know, out and up, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, head coach Chris Ash has done a great job with the defense. Expected to. That's his background. Yeah. The offense for the Scarlet Knights to be described as anemic in years past. Not so much this year, showing a little bit of, you know, surprise with some elements. It scored over 30 against Maryland.
Absolutely. They run the ball better, and let's take a look at how they do it. It is a tailback by committee. They got Edwards, Martin, and Blackshear. Again, neither one of them have, not one of them has the great numbers, but you look when you combine 1,200 yards out of the tailback position and 12 touchdowns. Now, how are they doing it? Let's take a look at it. They like the zone run game here. Again, they're going to read this thing, and he's going to cut back. Take a look at this cutback here on this one. He takes the ball, he starts front sides, comes all the way back, and he puts his shoulder down. Again, only 7 or 8 yard gain, but those things start to add up. Now let's take a look at what they do with their zone read here. They're going to take the ball, hand it to him, and he's going to read this 3 technique here, and he's going to read these 2 linebackers and make his cut. And very, very decisive. That's one thing they were not last year. So take a look at this on film. He's going to get the ball, and he's going to cut back that thing and go forward and get about 7 or 8 yards. Now, on the next play, we'll talk about some of the things that have caused problems for Penn State is the crossing routes. They're very good at it. Now, they have wideouts that can make plays. If they get loose, they can score touchdowns. Here's a key 3rd down and long against Michigan. They're going to run the crossing routes, pick people. So if Penn State gets into a lot of man-to-man and 3rd downs, expect them to go to some of these crossing routes. And let's take a look at this one here. They get a guy loose. They get a nice pick. He's got the ball, gets loose, and gets a 1st down and more. So Penn State's got to be very, very careful they don't let guys get loose. Now, the last thing we want to talk about is what they've done a little bit. They've got wideouts. They've had trouble getting the ball because they're not throwing the ball a lot, not very effectively. They're not turning it over. So they used one of their wideouts in the Wildcat stuff, and here he's going to run this thing, and they're going to get their playmaker with a chance on the ball. They're going to lead around this end and take a look at this against Michigan. And no question, they played Michigan the week after Penn State did. Looked at Saquon Barkley in the Wildcat most likely and said, how can we get our guy the ball? And here he gets loose. So if Penn State misses a tackle or 2, you don't want to see this on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, got to give them credit. Look, they're no longer a laughingstock. No Big Ten wins last year. They got 3 already this particular year. The phrase bowl eligible, actually accustomed to, or, you know, right attached to Rutgers. We'll see. It's going to be a tall task. They're a 30-point dog.
Absolutely. I think Penn State wins it, but again, Rutgers is going to play pretty well.
All right, we'll be right back on the Blue-White Tailgate.
All right, Rutgers coming into Beaver Stadium for the homecoming game. This is a better Rutgers team than a year ago. They've won 3 of their last 4 games, and let's face it, they've got, they feel good about themselves. They've got some momentum, which hasn't happened at Rutgers in a little while.
Yeah, I mean they stunk up the field last year. I mean they weren't very good. You know, they got a guy in Chris Ash, you know, former Ohio State defensive coordinator. You know, he's recruiting pretty well, and you know they're starting to turn things around and. Good for them.
New Jersey football. Who knew, right?
Hey, I grew up in New Jersey. I didn't go there. Just saying.
Well, there's some good football in Jersey, though, right? Just hasn't been good football at Rutgers for a little while. But, you know, Chris Ash, there's some love for him from the Big Ten conference standpoint, too. Some analysts saying this guy's doing one of the best jobs in the conference as far as the coaching goes. And, Steve, you made mention of it. I think a really good sign of a good coach is you take what you got and do what you can. I mean, look, the quarterback they're going to face, don't look for him to throw for 300 yards. He might not even throw for 200 yards, but he's mobile, he's quick. They're going to try and move the chains. Doesn't care about his stats. He just wants to get as many points on the board. And last year when they played at Rutgers, they just tried to get across midfield. Yeah. I mean, it was pathetic what they put out on the field from an offensive standpoint. And they just put 31 up on Maryland. I know it's Maryland's defense, but still, to put 30-plus points on the board in a Big Ten conference game is a big deal for these guys.
Let's take a look at the Chris Ash file put together by our crack staff. This is all the research they put together. You can see he's been a defensive coach most of his career. They're playing much better defensively. I'll go back to something I mentioned earlier in the show. It's tough mentally having to play uphill in a game. Going into the Penn State game a year ago, they had given up 134 points in the first quarter. Going into the Penn State game this season, they've given up 34 points in the first quarter. They've given themselves a chance.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, for the most part, Rutgers is not there as far as the talent with the rest of the Big Ten. And, for them to get off to a fast start, I mean, they can't be losing games in the first quarter. Right. I mean, I think that's the difference where last year they were getting blown. I mean, they were just giving up so many points in the first quarter, the game was over, by halftime.
Well, and that hits your psyche. I mean, when you know that you're taking the field, you're not as talented as the guys that you're playing against, and now all of a sudden you're down by 2 touchdowns. There's a little bit of give up in there after you get to the second quarter, certainly by the second half.
Yeah, Gus Edwards, who's transferred in from Miami, has now joined Robert Martin. And, Raheem Blackshear gives them a 1-2-3 punch in the backfield. They're all a little different players along the way. And Giovanni Ricchigno, now at quarterback, has taken over for Kyle Bolin. And he's a guy that stays away from big mistakes. I think that's safe to say about him.
Yeah, I mean, the fact is he's not worried about his statistics. I mean,
Right.
you got for my Italian friends, a guy named Giovanni, you got to love a guy like that. Jersey, Giovanni, pizza, I mean, whatever. He's handing the ball off. He's managing the game. He's not doing. He's not putting himself in a position where he's gonna fail. And I think he's playing with a lot of confidence.
Look, he's been in and out of the lineup, but Janarian Grant, this is one of the really great returners in the country. When they played Michigan, they used him a little bit of wildcat. I mean, he is the big play guy in that offense when he's in there.
When he's in there. And who knows what you're going to get out of the guy. Definitely has big play ability, and not many people on Rutgers' team do have big play ability. So it will be interesting to see if they get creative with him offensively. You mentioned out of the Wildcat formation. Will they throw some quick screens to him? What's he going to do in the return game? So it is someone that you need to look out for when you're watching the game.
Rutgers defensively, guys like Trevor Morris, Deontay Roberts, Ross Douglas. The linebacking play has improved, and Steven Gonzalez has noticed.
From what we've seen, they're pretty physical. They're quick, and obviously they have a sense of where to go, when they see the ball. So, challenge for us is, to get movement up front, and try to, push the D lineman just to be in their face, just to disrupt them a little bit. So.
And part of that, too, is Kamoka Ture does give them a presence, Todd, off the edge that can get to a quarterback.
Well, look, they're going to try and get to Trace McSorley. You mentioned earlier in the show, we talked about how they have odd man fronts. They're going to do things creatively, defensively, that you may have not seen before to try and get to Trace McSorley. And obviously, Trey is one of the guys that they can use to make that happen. The question is, do they have the athletes to stick with the Nittany Lions? Can they tackle after the catch is made? And for Penn State, they didn't finish drives last week. Field position-wise, I thought Michigan State did a great job. They won the turnover battle, and they won the field position battle. That's what Rutgers is going to try to do at Beaver Stadium on Saturday.
And to their credit, they've had to replace a couple of guys in the secondary with injuries. Blessing's out, Hampton's been out, yet they've had guys step up. Kai Hester, another transfer from Miami, leads them in interceptions with 3 so far this year. They took a wide out, flipped him over to the secondary. He had an interception last week, so, I mean, to their credit, they've come up with solutions. All right, we're going to come up with the solution to who will Trey pick, Miami or Notre Dame. This will be a pick that has a lot of passion to it, a lot of emotion to it, and probably some interesting comments. All right, welcome back. It's something that's caught the fancy of a lot of people across the country. Even on the Fox News TV show The Five, they brought this up the other day, talking about James Franklin getting CoOp Farmer to go over and shake hands with the opposition. Not one of your strong suits.
I don't really get it. I mean, I never shook anyone's hand after the game. I mean, I remember I knocked Joe Gagliardi out of the game. He was a quarterback at Rutgers. I went up to him after the game to make sure he was okay. But as far as shaking hands with the other guys on the team, I didn't do it.
Yeah, and I like how Coach went and made sure in his Tuesday press conference to start it off by saying what a great kid CoOp Farmer is. And he wasn't trying to show him up or to embarrass him or any of that type of thing. It was just an overall team message to go, and he just happened to see CoOp got him and say, hey, let's go and let's go shake hands.
Right, and CoOp is, without question, he is a great guy. But at the same time, a lesson to CoOp Farmer taught by James Franklin.
We're gonna win with class. We're gonna lose with class, and they stormed the field. It was a great win, obviously, and I just think guys were frustrated, guys were mad, and that's not why we come to Penn State. That's not the men we are. That's not the character we are. So I think that's a testament to Coach Ferguson how he is. The fact that he ran over there and got guys to come back and shake people's hands is that's the kind of man he is. That's the kind of leader he is for this program.
And CoOp Farmer is also exemplary as well, so give him a lot of credit. Lesson learned, you go to the next one. All right, here it is. Time now for the good, bad, and the ugly. Because Trey has to pick Miami and Notre Dame, we decided to set a good tone and have him go with the good.
So my good this week is the state of Penn State football. If you would have said to anybody 3 or 4 years ago after what had happened, and you're complaining about winning, losing 2 games in the first 9, going 11-2 one year, 7-2 up to this point, people would have said that you're crazy. And the fact is that Penn State football is back, and that's my good.
The bad, the odd thing is, I love watching college football. Right now, I'm struggling watching the NFL. I mean, it's just like everything's the same. It's all homogenized. I mean, that to me, I like watching high school football on a Friday night. I mean, pro game is not getting it done for me right now. Todd?
Well, the ugly. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder. There's a couple
over here.
There's a couple
I'm sitting here.
There's a couple of trophies / things going out there. The turnover chain in Miami and the Land Grant Trophy. They're not good looking.
No.
They're ugly. But boy, they look beautiful and awfully pretty when they're in your possession.
Yeah.
So we'll see if the Hurricanes get that turnover chain out against Notre Dame and the Land Grant Trophy. Whew, I sure wish it was in Happy Valley.
Have to wait a year for that. All right, time now for the Pick'em segment. Here we go. Roll it out there by our good friends at Number One Cycle Center. And here are the results to this point. Trey made a big move last week. Huge. Let's start out with Jay. Jay gets us rolling on the Pick'em segment this week. Is at Michigan State, Ohio State.
This is one of the most interesting matchups. The question, I think, is going to be whether Michigan State can pass protect enough to get their really, really good wideouts on Ohio State's secondary. And if they can, they'll win. But I think Ohio State wins this one in a really, really close game.
TCU, Oklahoma is going to be mine. And a couple of weeks ago, I think I would have picked TCU in this game. But now I feel Oklahoma has momentum. TCU does not. All right, now the moment we've all waited for. Miami, Notre Dame.
Okay, so they give me this game, and we joke about it, how much I really respect Notre Dame and Miami and how much I love those 2 programs. Okay, I hope it's 0-0. They play 9 overtimes, and nobody scores. I really don't like either of those programs, but I do have to say, and I can't believe I'm saying this, I think Miami pulls an upset at home.
I got to follow that. Well, I'm going to follow it with something big. The number 1 team in the nation, Georgia, at Auburn. I'm calling for the upset. I don't think Georgia's quarterback can get it done. I don't think they can go through undefeated. I'm going with the Tigers.
I'm with you on that. I think I agree. It's the first time they've been tested since playing at Notre Dame, really. I mean, the SEC has not been great this year. Time for keys to the game. My key for me, right off the bat, finding balance offensively. And then I think field position is going to be a big part of this as well. You got to win the giveaway, takeaway. That's all been part of the Penn State formula all year.
I think the keys for me is going to be, we're 28-point favorites. We're playing Rutgers. You don't normally play your strongest opponent on homecoming. Hello. And I think we need to get up to a fast start and just put the pedal to the metal and keep going.
No more than 1 turnover and get the ball to Saquon Barkley however you can, at least 20 times. Guy needs to touch the ball and needs to do something special.
All right, so not every show in the country had as entertaining a pick'em segment with Miami and Notre Dame like we had. I don't care what game day does. Nobody's going to talk like that. Thanks for joining us. Enjoy homecoming.